Lightning causes issues at airports, but one of the most dangerous things for air travel with thunderstorms isn't, believe it or not, the lightning. It's what Tim just alluded to, the microburst or downburst. And really before the advent of Doppler radar, planes used to crash quite a bit from downburst. And we actually have a story from the Charlotte area, which is one of those planes that actually was impacted by a downburst, one of several that happened in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s before Doppler radar. And these terminal Dopplers were widely installed across the country. And let's look back at the plane crash that happened, US Airways crash that happened here in Charlotte due to a downburst.
It was summertime, hot.
What started as a routine short flight from Columbia to Charlotte,
the blue sky was replaced with darkness,
quickly turned dangerous. 16 approached the airport. It wasn't until long after families received the dreaded news about their loved ones that survivors learned a microburst, a thunderstorm with heavy wind and rain, caused those skies.
They just could not react to the tremendous amount of force from that downburst of high wind.
At the time, neither air traffic control nor the flight crew really knew what they were getting into. The pilots were in the process of trying to land when they realized it was unsafe in those conditions and were going around for another approach.
The pilots got lulled into a situation where, because they could see the airport, they really didn't factor in the severity of the weather.
Gregory Fife investigated the crash for the National Transportation Safety Board. While Doppler radar was available to local TV news viewers back then, air traffic controllers did not have access.
That may have been the difference in getting the crew to abort the landing sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so looking back at 1994 when that plane crash happened. And Tim, I think this is the hidden danger of thunderstorms that pilots didn't really understand until Dr. Ted Fujita studied microbursts, and then they installed these airports and wind shear detection. Talk a little bit and explain how these microbursts and downbursts from a thunderstorm are so dangerous to air travel.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, and it's really scary to think about, before, like you were saying, before they were as detectable as they are to us nowadays. But let's talk about it. What is a microburst? You probably heard about it on the news. Maybe you've heard Brad or myself talk about it before. So think about how a thunderstorm works in the first place. So when we have a thunderstorm, looks like I've lost my graphic here for just a second. We're going to get it back. Don't you worry. Look at that lovely live radar just there. So anyway, back to the microburst graphic. The way a thunderstorm works in the first place is you start by having a big cloud. Thunderstorms are formed by an updraft in the first place. That's that upward moving air. But on the flip side of the storm, you're going to have a downdraft that comes out the other side. So I guess I don't have that graphic popped up one more time. I'm going to load it up here. But thunderstorms are made of upward air on one side and then downward air on the other side. So as that kind of goes, if you're an airplane flying into this and you run into that first part where that air is going up, you're going to maybe overcorrect a little bit. And then on the other side, that downward forcing air could cause you to just go in the total opposite direction. So if you make that correction, then you're in a really, really bad place because you've already gone in the wrong direction, and then it's going to push you down even more closer to the ground. So these microbursts, they're really small, just a number of miles, but when it comes to these airplanes flying through a situation, if you didn't know that was there, I think that can be, like Brad was saying, the cause of a lot of that throughout the history.
Yeah, and I think we take for granted how safe flying is now because we detect these. And, this is why there's so many delays in the summer. You don't want to fly into these things. And you talk to any pilot, right, they will say this is the thing that scares them to death. They will not go near a thunderstorm because the microbursts, the hail, and those up and down drafts are just something you can't account for as a pilot. Now, one of the reasons we know so much about these now has been the advent of Doppler radar. And Doppler radar was this great new tool that allowed us not just to see where rain was, Tim, but it allowed us to see the wind speed and the direction, which was really important. And here in Charlotte, we were lucky that, even though we don't have a National Weather Service radar here, the FAA installed what's called a terminal Doppler radar. It's a much weaker, smaller radar, but it specifically is designed to detect downbursts and microbursts. It does a really good job of that. It suffers in other things, and we struggle with coverage. But the radars really have been a lifesaver, and the coverage of them is so crucial to aviation and severe weather here in the Carolinas.
It's just amazing, when we're living in a certain time now. It's just mind-boggling to think back to before they existed. And I guess you never have that option. It's like the same thing we think about when it comes to hurricanes. How did they do it before satellites? Technology is such a huge part of what we do now in the weather enterprise that it's a bit scary to think about how things used to be. And it kind of also shows you how important it is that we keep making these awesome tools going forward to even get a little bit better. Maybe somewhere in the future, 20, 30 years from now, we'll say, gosh, can you remember when they couldn't tell the difference between there's a tornado here and not a tornado over there? Hopefully we continue to get better tools going forward, because it's wild to think about things without Doppler radar.